Hi guys, this video is all about the question walkthrough for task 1 of the Functional Skills Level 1 writing exam. So first of all, I'm going to show you a few things that I think are important, and then we're going to go through and have a look at my sample answer and see what you guys think. So first of all, task 1, it's important to note it's 21 marks in total. You have about 36 minutes that's suggested by the exam board. You get 200 to 250 words. Now it's really important to make a note of that because it gives you an indication of how much detail they're really expecting. They give you 3 bullet points to address, and it's made up of 2 parts. So usually it's got an information box, which is a section that gives the information that you're expected to make reference to. Now, if you're someone who's quite nervous about writing for different topics, that information box will really be key. You're not expected to be an expert about any of these subtopics, but just use that information and a little bit of your own creative writing skills, and you should be absolutely fine. And then they'll give you the actual writing task. So some of the things that I struggled with when I was answering this question is that I kept repeating the words and I had to go back and edit them, just so that I could show some more variation in my vocabulary. I kept using words like nice, which is really basic, and I had to go back and replace it with words such as lush and beautiful, to be more specific about why something was good. So particularly, you'll see in my writing in a second, I was really bad. I kept using words great and good. Give that little bit of detail, really describe what is good about something. But it's also important to note, with only 250 words available, you have to make sure you're not using unnecessary words. The writing needs to be as concise as possible, that's short and to the point, but at the same time, it does need that appropriate detail that will paint the picture for the audience and make it a gripping text. So right now, I'm just going to go over and we'll have a look at my level 1 writing task walkthrough. So is this an example question that I wrote that's based on the exam? I did this so that your teachers can still use their mocks and we're not kind of using up all these things that now you can't use. So first of all, we've got the information box. So Greg Matthews, an old school friend of yours, has just moved to where you live. He's excited about moving, but is unsure of what it is like and what there is to do. Write an email giving him some information on what it's like to live where you live. So straight away, what I get some of my students to do is underline a few key pieces of information. So Greg Matthews is a person obviously you don't know, but we do have the information that he's an old school friend. So I'd underline that first of all. That tells us that it's going to be an informal email, a real casual, informal email, someone who you're actually on quite close personal terms with. Okay. It's also really important to make a note of which format they're asking you to write in. So this one is going to be an email. And then we have the actual writing task. Okay, so we can refer back to this. Sometimes information boxes are a little bit better and a little bit more than this, but I'll just give it as a bit of an example. Write an email to your friend Greg Matthews suggesting some things he could do when he moves and giving some information on what it's like to live where you live. In your email, you should. So here are those 3 important bullet points that they tend to give you. This is what we call the indicative content. And it's indicative because it's things that you have to include. Okay, so you need to cover these 3 topics. You need to say what is nice, you need to describe the places that are good to visit, and explain what things you like to do there and why. Now, these questions always involve a little bit of creative writing, but you can also use your previous experience if you do have previous experience of this. So in this case, I took the example of my own hometown, and I wrote about my own hometown because it's something I'm passionate about and I know a little bit about this place. So I knew I could write about it. Okay, so usually in the exam, I'm just going to put your attention to these things here, these 3 things that kind of show which format it is. So we've got the from, to, and subject, which is typical of an email. Usually in the level 1 exam, they actually give you a format that's very similar to this with those already filled out. But if they don't, and if you're going for a higher level 1, like level 2 functional skills, they might be expecting you to write them yourself. So just check on the exam paper if they do expect you to write it or if they don't. Okay, let's get into my answer. So, hi Greg, I'm so happy to hear that you're coming to town. I think you're going to have a great time here. There are lots of things to do as well as some great places to visit. Okay, so I've got a really nice short introductory paragraph All it's really showing the examiner here is that I've got a casual relationship with Greg, and that I've understood the question. You'll notice I've highlighted these words great because it's this real kind of weak vocabulary, and I thought if I highlight it, I could see how often I'm using this word, and I should try and correct that in the future. Now, some people have different ways of structuring something like this. Now, I chose to let it flow kind of naturally. But other people, what they do is they'll take these 3 bullet points and they'll structure it. So they'll do like an introductory paragraph, and then in the first one, they'll say what is nice about where they live, and then they'll tick that bit off. Then they do a paragraph that's all about describing some places that are good to visit. And then they'll do a third paragraph, explain what things you like to do. So they'll do nice things in general, like beautiful landscape and things like that, describe the places. That's quite a specific paragraph. And then third paragraph that explain activities and why. Then they'd probably do a final paragraph that sums up and says goodbye if they're within the word limit. And you'll see what I mean by that in a minute, because it's actually quite difficult to fit everything in there, especially if you're passionate about the place. So we have my introductory paragraph here, and it's fine. It's not really getting me too many marks, but it's showing that I understand the question. And then we move on to this one here. So this is my main paragraph that I'm starting with. Firstly, I want to express just how beautiful Redditch is as a town. So right there, I think I've hit that indicative content criteria. So I'm starting to describe Redditch. There are beautiful, lush trees. And once again, see that vocabulary, it stops becoming all about great and nice and good, and I've got beautiful lush trees. And I've used 2 adjectives there to describe the trees, so it's a little bit more powerful, a little bit more interesting for the reader. It gives a real sense of being in the countryside. One of my favourite places to go is a place known as the Five Tunnels. I think this would be a great place to take your dog, as I know Rufus would love to have a nice swim, and the little streams around there are wonderful, sorry. So I had to kind of create a character, create a dog, and you're allowed to do this in the exam. Sometimes when the information doesn't give you enough and you want to embellish a little bit, by all means go ahead and do that. So I've used that a little bit of creative freedom, and I've invented a dog for that person, because that dog then fits really well into why Redditch is such a beautiful place. You can see that I've been using my commas throughout and my full stops, but I've also now included my exclamation point there. So I'm showing that I've got a little bit of variety in punctuation. You also see that I've used my contracted apostrophe there. Okay, that's a key thing for formal writing. You would say you're rather than you are, just a nice little note there. And as you'll see, the paragraphs are really nicely organized. Well, hopefully you'll agree with me, guys, that it's fairly nicely organized. And I've tried to break it down into these various different elements. So each paragraph should almost have a specific task that it's trying to achieve. That makes sense. So this one, it was trying to describe Redditch. Next one, because I'm quite passionate, I kind of wrote in a quite a strange structure. So you have to forgive me on this one. Next one, I went about the activities. So one of the great things about Redditch is there are so many activities. Oh, look at that. That's really terrible, guys. There are so many. So I've done, there you go. I've made a typo myself. So it does happen, especially when you're writing fast, you will make these mistakes, but it's really important to proofread. Even though I proofread this once before, once or twice, I still made that one really key grammatical error. So that should be, there are so many activities to get involved with. For example, there was a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu gym full of friendly and outgoing people who I think you'd get along well with. Okay, so I mentioned an activity there. I next went on to my next paragraph, and once again you'll see that I'm trying to show off a little bit with my vocabulary by saying extensive. We also have an extensive shopping centre with a HMV and a game, so you can get the latest DVDs and games you might like. Now, I had to use my imagination and pretend that I knew Greg and imagine what this person might like. So I mentioned some shopping places that might be of interest to him. Also, if you do go to a shopping centre, we have a small but pretty decent cinema with regular timings, and the place is mostly clean. I've used a dash here, if you don't mind the occasional bit of popcorn getting stuck to your foot. So a dash can often be used to kind of instead of a comma here, to kind of explain what I mean by mostly clean. So a dash can do that, can kind of explain. Overall, Reddit is a friendly and pleasant place, good for someone like yourself who enjoys being part of a community. I think you'll soon come to love that place. See you soon, Bookworm. Okay, so it's really strange. The thing that struck me as really weird here is that was 249 words in total. So that was, you know, that was nearly hitting the maximum amount of words. And when you're passionate and when you're a little bit creative, you actually struggle. You'll find that you'll probably actually struggle to include a lot of information. Like this bit here, I thought this was particularly really short. I would have liked to expand upon it. But I think it's down to the individual. You know, you try and decide which parts are interesting, which parts you want to kind of develop that you think will really be applicable, you know, to the question. And that might be where I might have lost a few marks. And you might even see that here, Google has actually corrected me when I've said pretty decent. That's a classic example of where it could have been just decent. Okay. But when I'm writing informally, you tend to kind of have these terrible ways of writing. Okay, so as you can see, I've tried to include a lot of kind of structural techniques. So I've used my introductory phrase, hi Greg. I've done like an introductory paragraph, and I've used these. In GCSE we call them discourse markers. Okay, and what they are, they're connectives that show the order of your text. So I've got my firstly to show that it's like, you know, I'm starting my reasons why someone would come here, and then I've used overall. It's not a great connective to use here, but I'm using it to summarize my thoughts and feelings. And then, you know, because it's an email and because it's informal, I've chosen to change my paragraph. I think you'll soon come to love this place. See you soon. You know, rather than having yours sincerely or yours faithfully, which is quite traditional, because it's my friend, I'm just going to say see you soon, Bookworm. And in this case, let's imagine that Bookworm would be my nickname or anything like that. Okay. Finally, guys, you know, there is a second task associated with this question. And what I've done, instead of writing it out myself, is I've actually provided it as a question for you guys to attempt. Because the questions are, in essence, they're quite repetitive. The thing that changes the subject and the form. So, like, you know, and possibly the purpose. So, you know, it might be to advise or entertain. But I've given you guys one, and I'll link it to my test account if you want to kind of have a go. But this one, you know, it's a much shorter response. I think it's only worth about 15 off the top of my head. It's only worth about 15 marks. And you can see they're only expecting about 150 to 200 marks, 200 words, sorry. Because, you know, it's a much shorter response. Oftentimes they don't even ask for an article, they tend to ask for more of a shorter form. It's usually an email, which traditionally can be quite casual and quite short. But yeah, so I'm going to link that to my test, and feel free to have a go at it. And if anybody wants to send me any messages about how they found that, then please let me know. And then finally, guys, if you could please like and subscribe if you did like the video, and comment if you want to see any more videos, then that'd be great. Okay, and I'll see you next time.